You're standing on a beach in the Amazon forest, pushing a canoe filled with plantains across the river. Your hands are shaking, and you're not alone. There are 20 warriors on the opposite bank, each holding 7-foot bows, and you're praying they don't turn you into a pincushion. That's the reality for the locals near the Mashco Piro territory. And these aren't your noble savage tribes from a documentary. These are the most terrifying, uncontacted people on Earth. And in August of 2024, they proved exactly why the jungle belongs to them. So the Mashco Piro live like it's still the Stone Age. No metal, no electricity, no glass. They don't even have clay pots, which means they can't even boil water. Their entire world is bamboo, fire, and blood. But here's the thing. They're not primitive in the way you think. They're apex predators. These guys can hit a spider monkey in the treetops from 40 meters away. Think about that. A target the size of your fist swinging through branches, and they nail it with a bamboo-tipped arrow. The locals say if you see a Mashco Piro warrior, you're already in his sights. By the time you realize you've been shot, you're already falling. Their arrows, 7 feet long, hand-carved, sharpened over fire until the bamboo's edge is knife sharp. They twist the fletching so the arrows spin in the air for perfect accuracy. It's basically a medieval missile system. And they've been perfecting it for centuries. Now you'd think people would just stay away, right? Wrong. The logging companies, they don't care. To them, the Amazon is just money waiting to be chopped down. Maeras Canales Temhamanu, and we'll call it MCT for short from now on. They had been pushing deeper into Mashco Piro territory for years. They're building roads, cutting down 20,000-year-old ironwood trees. They're making noise, and noise in the jungle, that's a death sentence. The locals tried to warn them. The young people from the village of Nueva Oceania knew what was coming. Enrique Añez, their leader, kept saying the same thing. They are in danger. And he wasn't talking about the tribe. He was talking about anyone stupid enough to ignore the arrows. But the loggers had shotguns. They thought that these weapons made them safe. And they were wrong. On August 29, 2024, a crew of forestry workers was deep in the San Juan Ravine, a narrow, suffocating stretch of jungle near the Tahamanu River. They were opening a troca, a dirt road for their trucks. Chainsaws screaming, diesel fumes choking the air. They were so loud, they didn't hear the forest go silent around them. The Mashco Piro don't announce themselves. They don't shout warnings, they just appear. 1 second, Santiago Conde Quispe was cutting through a tree. The next, he had a 7-foot arrow through his chest. And that was just the beginning. This attack was surgical. Santiago went down first. He didn't scream, he didn't even have time to do that. The arrow punched through his ribcage and he just dropped. His chainsaw was still running when he hit the ground. William Valles Flores, one of the workers, watched it happen. He said later that the arrows didn't make a sound. No whistle, no warning, just the wet thunk of bamboo hitting flesh. Then the second volley came. Edwin Chu Fernandez took one in the shoulder. He tried to run, but the jungle doesn't care if you're fast. The Mashco Piro know every root, every vine, every shadow. Edwin made it maybe 20 meters before another arrow found his back. Gerardo Gomez Zorrilla, the oldest guy on the crew at 54 years old, he didn't even see them. He was by the equipment when the arrows started flying. Some of the loggers said they heard him yell, but by the time anyone turned around, he was already gone. And here's the thing about the Mashco Piro. They don't just shoot you and leave. They use a tactic the locals call porcupining. They keep shooting until your body looks like a pincushion. It's psychological warfare. They don't want you to see what happens when you ignore the warnings. William ran. He didn't think, he just bolted through the undergrowth, crashing through vines and stumbling over roots. His lungs were burning, his legs were shaking, but he didn't stop. He couldn't, because behind him, he could hear them moving through the trees. The Mashco Piro don't chase like animals, they hunt. They use bird calls, capuchin, monkey sounds, tinamu, bird clicks to coordinate. It's a language the forest understands, but outsiders don't. So while William was running blind, They knew exactly where he was. He made it to a neighboring concession operated by a guy named Yavan Quispe Doran. He was covered in scratches, hyperventilating, barely able to talk. The first thing he did was pull out his phone and send a voice message to his wife. They killed Santiago, arrows everywhere. I don't know where the others are. That message was the first confirmation the outside world got that something had horribly gone wrong in the San Juan ravine. But here's where it gets worse. 2 other workers were missing. Nobody knew if they were dead, hiding, or bleeding out somewhere in the jungle. And nobody could go back to check why. Because the Mashco Piro were still out there. Search teams tried to get close, but the jungle was a minefield. Every rustling leaf could be a warrior. Every shadow could be an ambush. The recovery crews couldn't even use the roads. The tribe had cut off all the exits. They were trapped in their own logging camp, surrounded by a forest that suddenly belonged to someone else. For days, the bodies just sat there, rotting in the heat, covered in insects, and the only way anyone knew where they were? Vultures. Huge black garzinos circling over specific spots in the ravine, waiting for their turn. It took a helicopter, a literally military helicopter, with the Peruvian National Police and the Ministry of Culture to finally get in and pull the bodies out. And even then, they were terrified. The officers were sweating, rifles up, they're scanning the tree line the whole time. When they counted everyone, the number wasn't 2 dead. It was 5. 5 men, 5 arrows, 5 families that would never see their husbands, fathers, brothers again. In the Mashco Piro, they just melted back into the forest like ghosts. Now the questions everyone was asking, why now? The Mashco Piro had been dealing with loggers for years. There had been close calls, warnings, even a few injuries. But this was a full-scale execution. Something had changed. The investigators started piecing it all together. And what they found was a perfect storm of stupidity and greed. First, the loggers had ignored every single warning. In July 2024, just 1 month before the massacre, another crew had been attacked in the same exact area. A worker got hit with an arrow, survived barely. The Native Federation of the Madre de Dios River sent an urgent alert to the Peruvian government. Get your people out of there right now, or more people are gonna die. The government did nothing. MCT, the logging company, did nothing. The workers just kept cutting trees down. But here's the thing that really set the Mashco Piro off. The bridge. MCT had been building a permanent bridge over the Tishamo River. This wasn't some temporary crossing. This was industrial-grade infrastructure designed to let trucks roll through the jungle year-round. Before this, the loggers could only work during the dry season, when the river was low. The wet season gave the tribe a break, a chance to breathe. The bridge took that away from them. Survival International, the human rights group, pulled up satellite images showing the construction. They could literally track the Mashco Piro's movements, shrink it inward as the roads expanded. The tribe was being squeezed into their hunting grounds were just getting smaller. Their territory was being carved up, piece by piece. And then there was the trees. The loggers weren't just cutting any trees. They were going after the shihachu, am I say that wrong? Ironwood trees. Some of these things were over 1,000 years old. They've been standing there since before the Spanish even reached Peru. To the Mashco Piro, these trees aren't just plants. They're sacred to them, ancestral, witness to everything their people have survived. The locals said the tribe viewed cutting down of their trees as demonic force. It's not logging, it's desecration. So when the chainsaw started screaming on August 29th, the Mashco Piro didn't see workers. They saw invaders, demons, destroyers, the same kind of people who enslaved their ancestors during the rubber boom of the 1800s. Investigators started digging into the Mashco Piro's history, and it explained everything. During the rubber boom, these people were hunted like animals. Rubber barons like Carlos Fitzcarrald pushed into the Amazon, enslaving thousands of indigenous people to tap rubber trees. The ones who didn't comply, massacred. The ones who survived, did so by running into the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the jungle and cutting off all contact with the outside world. That's why they're uncontacted. It's not a choice, it's survival for them. The tribe remembers, they pass down the stories, and every time they see an outsider, they see the ghosts of people who tried to wipe them out. But there's more. The Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC, had actually certified MCT's logging operation as ethical. Yeah, ethical. The same company building roads into uncontacted territory had a little green stamp that said, "We respect indigenous rights." Indigenous groups had been screaming about this since 2020. They told the FSC, "You're certifying a conflict zone. People are gonna die." The FSC ignored them. They trusted MCT to self-regulate and create conservation zones within the concession. The Mashco Piro don't read maps. They don't recognize territory. They don't recognize imaginary lines. To them, the entire forest is one continuous home. And the certified loggers, with their FSC badges, they looked exactly the same as the illegal ones. After the massacre, the FSC suspended MCT certification, but only after 5 bodies were pulled out of the jungle. Only after the international headlines started rolling in. It was damage control, not prevention. The local Yain people, meanwhile, were all caught in the middle of all this. Their village, Nueva Oceania, sits right on the edge of Mashco Piro territory. Enrique Añez, their leader, described what it's like living next to the tribe. "When we hear the bulldozers, we know they hear them too. And we know they are angry." The Yain people have their own protocols. When the Mashco Piro show up, and they do, looking for machetes, pots, bananas, the villagers don't fight. They retreat. They leave food. They show their palms to prove they're unarmed. They yell Namole, which means brothers, hoping the tribe remembers they share a distant ancestry. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the Mashco Piro take the food and leave. Sometimes they point arrows at people's faces. The Yain are terrified. They're related to the Mashco Piro, but that doesn't mean they're safe. In fact, the tribe might see them as traitors. Sedentary soft, associated with the loggers and the government. One woman from the village, Amelia, said it best. They are unpredictable. They're angry, and the machines are driving them crazy. So here's what really happened in the San Juan ravine. The Mashco Piro didn't just stumble onto these loggers. They tracked them for days, maybe weeks. They watched, they listened to the chainsaws tearing through their forests. They saw the roads getting closer. They watched another sacred tree fall. And then they made their decision. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was a message written in blood. Leave or die. The warriors used the noise to their advantage. While the chainsaws screamed, they moved into position. Silent, invisible, they surrounded the worksite, cutting off every escape route. By the time Santiago Conde Quispe fell, that first arrow hit his chest, the trap had already been sprung. The Mashco Piro weren't trying to scare them. They were trying to eliminate them. And they succeeded. 5 men dead. The logging company certifications was yanked. The Peruvian government finally forced to acknowledge what indigenous groups have been saying for years. You cannot build a bridge into someone's home and expect them not to fight back. But here's the thing nobody really wants to talk about. Was this going to happen again? The reserve expansion that would legally protect the Mashco Piro's territory, still stuck in bureaucratic limbo. The logging concessions, still active. The roads, still being built. The government prioritizes timber revenue over indigenous lives, and the companies know it. The Mashco Piro are fighting a war they can't win. They are surrounded. To the west, Manu National Park, protected, but closed off. To the south, illegal gold miners. To the east, North logging concessions carving up. The last free space, they're not aggressors. They are cornered. And cornered things bite. The locals in Nueva Oceania still hear the bulldozers at night. They still see the warriors on the riverbanks during the dry season. They still leave food and pray the Mashco Piro take it and go. But the jungle's shrinking. The machines are getting louder. And the arrows, they're not gonna stop. Santiago, Edwin, and Gerardo didn't deserve to die, but they were working for a system that sees the Amazon as a profit for the Mashco Piro, as obstacles. The tribes see it differently. To them, every tree cut is an ancestor killed. Every road built is a scar. Every outsider is a threat. They've been threatened enough. Well, that'll do it for today's story. Hope you enjoyed that one. And there's more to come. Thank you.